Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky. It is trade deadline day. What can the Lakers do to fill out the team around its new star, Luka Doncic? What should they do? We'll find out next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, and sometimes on weekends, as you people will find out on Saturday. No matter how or where you get your podcasts, this one's always free and never behind paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube. It's where 30,000 subscribers strong are all hanging out and looking to find out, Andy, what the Lakers are going to do at today's trade deadline. It is at noon Pacific is the end of the NBA's trade season, SZN. We will find out if the Lakers manage to pull anything off or if, trading for Luka Doncic was the best they could do during this trade season. But Rob Pelinka, Andy, did note that the Lakers are still in the market for improvements, most notably at center. So we will see what they are able to pull off, and obviously talk in this episode about what they should try to do to fill out the team around Luka and LeBron. Do want to let everybody know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. It is amazing, Andy, on how many ways in which the acquisition of Luka Doncic reframes everything the Lakers do in the near and short term. And I think you could certainly make the argument that it has reframed their priority list and their needs list as we head into the end of the trade deadline this afternoon.
I am fully aware of the irony of having spent, the better part of a few years saying there's only so much the Lakers could or should expend in capital or even prioritize more centers when Anthony Davis is on your team, and he's going to spend the majority of his time, particularly during the playoffs, gobbling up all the center minutes. We can't recreate 2020. Stop with this. This is nonsense. And by the way, it's something I do want to at some point talk about with the reports that the Lakers had grown weary of AD, death taxes, and reminding them, hey, I consider myself a 4. But I'm fully aware of the irony of me saying now top priority in terms of things to add would be a center.
Yes. It is. Well, look, it's not like context, Andy. It matters. And let's make something abundantly clear. The context has changed. Because, part of what that argument was about, part of what that debate was about was the major issue the Lakers had in terms of ball handlers and shot creators and facilitators and all that kind of stuff. And while Luka is not technically, I guess, like a point guard, like in terms of size and
he's like
position,
LeBron, he's whatever the hell you want him to be.
Exactly. And when you now have Gabe Vincent as your backup, and who can come in and do that, and then 3 excellent ball handlers and facilitators, 2 of the best in the world in Luka and LeBron, and then Austin Reeves, who has played quite well this season. That changes the context. You don't have that problem nearly as much anymore, especially since 2 of those guys are 30-something minute a night players. So, now what is the biggest shortcoming the Lakers have? It is a center, particularly a defensive center. And that aspect of it's different. You don't necessarily need anymore the profile of a guy who can play with Anthony Davis. Like Miles Turner, I'm still in on the thing that Miles Turner, I'm still on. Indiana's not trading for. But
last I checked, they're the 4 seed. It would truly make no sense.
They're not trading Miles Turner. But
unless they just lurve Rui or something, they're not doing this. It doesn't make sense.
Right. Certain players are still applicable. He is one of these guys. But the math And the calculus changes there too, because they no longer need to think of somebody who can play for 25 minutes at a time in a game with Anthony Davis or something like that. It can be somebody who fits with what they do now, who they have now, and needs to be a good defender with some mobility. But do they have to be able to step out and hit threes? Maybe, maybe not. It's not the requirement. My point is the requirements for that center are very different.
It's also changed too. We had talked about in between the period of sending out D'Angelo Russell and Luka arriving, how all of a sudden Gabe Vincent became very difficult to theoretically move in a potential trade for Jonas Valanciunas that neither one of us wanted them to make regardless, and now is off the table because the Kings have traded for JV, and mercifully that is no longer on our plate to discuss. But like Gabe, I don't want to say Gabe has become completely expendable now because he's actually played pretty well.
Mm-hmm. And he's one of your more he becomes a valuable point of attack defender
right
in the backcourt.
But Gabe has become somebody that is less necessary now to keep on the roster when you have the three guys that you mentioned and also Vando as somebody that, we're still ramping up, we're still seeing them ramp up minutes for Vando, but when he's been out there, he's looked very good, and he is somebody that can be deployed in that role. Again, it doesn't make Gabe Vincent completely expendable, but it does make him more, I think, practically on the table to move for a big. Well, certainly for a big, he's more on the table to move
agree.
than he was 96 hours ago.
A week ago, you needed to, if you traded Vincent, you had to find a way to get a guard back. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, although I will say, given what they're trying to improve, if you're running short on more nimble, littles to put out, on your roster if you trade Vincent for a big. And,
sure.
you are at that point dedicated to some really big lineups, which could be very interesting. But
also, like, for an example, this is purely just a hypothetical. The math for Gabe Vincent sending him out to Portland for Robert Williams, that works. You might have to do you might have to include, Cam Reddish or, like a lower salary with Gabe to make the money work on the Lakers.
Figure out how to route these guys to different teams, get their teams involved and all
that. That is as the base of a plan that is doable. And somebody like Robert Williams, assuming he stays on the court, and that is the gamble with Time Lord, he can help you offset the point of attack that you lose in Gabe because he's really good at protecting the area that would need manning after somebody blew past whatever guard isn't Gabe Vincent.
Yeah, it's, we'll see. I think basically the Lakers, you could make an argument, might be better off, excuse me, like looking at what they have and then assessing in the offseason. But the flip side of that is, I mentioned this on the show for Wednesday. I am not convinced by any stretch that the Lakers need to just look to the future. They need to, be careful because they were made less by the big deal. Even if it's smart in the long term, it hurts them in the short. I'm not sold on that. Like, they created a hole and they changed where some of their weaknesses are, but they are playing very well. They have won 9 of 11. They just finished a 5-1 road trip. And the player that they added is Luka Doncic. And while I don't think, I would be naive to think that, Luka hasn't played since Christmas and he's going to come in and it's just going to be, perfect from the get-go. JJ Redick, and we'll get into a little bit of this because Luka, goes through practice and all of this, aiming for a Saturday return against Indiana. Redick was asked about this on the podcast when he was still doing that, talked about these guys as supercomputers, Luka and LeBron. And so the process of getting this thing together, when you're working with supercomputers and a pretty heady player in Austin Reeves as your third guy, smart players like Dorian Finney-Smith and active players like Jared Vanderbilt. I don't see why it needs to be a given that this is some sort of unclimbable mountain for this season. This is still a team
you're taking a
very much in contention.
You are taking a look. They've been very good over the last few games, and kudos to them. You are taking a big ass swing in the playoffs with Jackson Hayes as the only center with any.
I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm saying, but that after the break, I'll explain. Like, you're kind of making my point for me. If there's a move out there to be made, and it's something that would appeal to you in the offseason, like, it's a little bit of a risk, but like, we like this player. It's the kind of move more or less that we would make in the offseason anyway. Make it now. Do something now. You don't have to wait. That's kind of the point that I'm making. If you can make an improvement that isn't some sort of wild swing that is just for this year, I don't see why the Lakers have to be super conservative, between now and noon tomorrow. And there is one wrinkle to this that I do think is fascinating to think about in terms of how the Lakers look as they finish up the break and then coming out. We'll get to it next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball season is heating up. You're damn right it is. And there is no better way to get real money action.
Can we just say it's heated?
Yeah. One might say it's scalding. And watching your favorite NBA stars is fun. It's the best with Prize Picks. Real money action happening, whether you're a diehard fan or just love some friendly competition, or you're just being introduced to us from Slovenia. Prize Picks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. Here's how it works. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Say you think in a game that LeBron is going to drop more than 30 points, or maybe you think Luka is going to get less than 10 assists. Prize Picks lets you make your predictions and put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. And with Prize Picks Flex Play option, even if one of the picks doesn't hit, you can still double your money. Plus, when it hits, you get your money fast, sometimes as quick as 15 minutes. Keep any game exciting with Prize Picks. Now's the perfect time to join. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. There's no need to even win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game.
Quick reminder, if you want some of this fantastic NBA stuff delivered to you every day, sign up for the Locked On Lakers newsletter. You see it, you go to lockedondaily.com, and once you're there, you click on Locked On Lakers, get the show and a bunch of analysis from around the channel delivered to you every day. Great way to keep up with the show, great way to keep up with the channel, great way to keep up the network, and obviously what's going on around the NBA. So, yeah, I mean, the point that I'm trying to make, Andy, is like there is an opportunity. I believe that while there is obviously some risk and we don't know what it's going to look like and all that, I do think this team at 10 games over 500 and a chance to win a few more games before the break is worth investing in. I think you need to be careful. I wouldn't do anything, super crazy. But again, if it looks like this is, if this is a player that we'd be interested in the offseason, this is the kind of deal we would do in the offseason, then I think it's worth that extra 10 or 15% of risk or whatever it might be to do it now. Because, not to get into this, is Luka happy or unhappy stuff, but I think it is important to show everyone that you are ready to take advantages of opportunities if you believe that the team that you have is worth investing in. It's not just about Luka, it's about everybody else. It's about taking advantage of an opportunity, because the West, while everybody is loading up, even Sacramento, they trade
De'Aaron
Fox away. By the way, he looked really good in his San Antonio debut. It's not like they completely blew it up. They brought in Zach LaVine, who's a pretty good player. The Warriors just acquired Jimmy Butler. Like, the West arms race is still continuing. And so, but that said, it's pretty wide open. Other than Oklahoma City, Denver is still Denver, but they've looked shakier this year than in previous seasons. Houston, nobody quite knows what they're going to be in the playoffs. It's open enough that I think it's worth investing in this team if the right opportunity comes along. The part that I wanted to ask you about, Andy, and when the Lakers acquired Rui Hachimura a couple years ago, you talk about it in the context of the Lakers are going to integrate Rui into what they're doing. To me, it seems like the situation they're in now with Luka, I guess, and this is maybe the counter to what I was saying 46 seconds ago. The counter is the Lakers aren't integrating Luka into what they're doing. They're integrating what they're doing into Luka. He becomes more of, this is such a drastic change. I guess the counterpoint is, I'm not sure what the template is. So, which side of this do you land on in terms of go for it or maybe wait to see what you have?
It's interesting. First of all, during Wednesday's practice, JJ said that they've been kind of trending in a direction of playing how he wanted to, but how he wants to is a way that aligns very well with how Luka plays anyway. So in some respects, I mean, not that they were gaming this out necessarily for the arrival of Luka Doncic, but it sounded like JJ was relatively confident that, even acknowledging there's going to be some things to figure out, that they could figure it out relatively quickly. There's also a certain degree of house money that you're playing with this season. Obviously, to the degree that you think LeBron and Luka can be a really formidable foundation, you want to try to maximize that whenever possible. But the reality is, it is rare when mid-season deals, even mid-season deals involving, superstar level talent, lead to a championship right away. Occasionally you get a team like the Boston Celtics in 2008. Sorry to bring it up, but that team was assembled and won a championship their first year, but they didn't add, it's not like they added Kevin Garnett at the trade deadline. They had a full offseason, they had the full year to eventually get to where they were going to go. So, the idea that, you might not maximize this year, the truth is it would likely be difficult to do anyway. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try if you feel good about it or you have an opportunity, or like you said, it's somebody that you would think about adding anyway. So you might as well just take them off the board. As far as the idea of what to prioritize, it's interesting. Jovan Buha covers the Lakers for The Athletic, friend of the show. Check out Buha's block, his podcast. He talked about how, in a piece that he has up at The Athletic right now about sort of the cap math moving forward with Luka, that the Lakers have an opportunity to get not a completely clean cap sheet in the summer of 2026, but more flexibility. And that is something that they're definitely going to be considering, in terms of the moves that you make, or, would you trade to, anything from would you trade for player X with a contract that lasts a couple of years, or even something this offseason, Dorian Finney-Smith has a player option. What type of deal would you give him and how long? These are all considerations that come into account, and you have to think about it at this deadline. The good news is, I think, in terms of trying to meet all of these points as cleanly as possible, center is, I think we both agree, the number one priority in terms of holes to fill. There really aren't any centers out there the Lakers could target that are under contract for 3 or 4 seasons, that are realistically gettable. So that doesn't really mess anything up.
No, but then the other thing I think about it in this context too, it's cap space is valuable, but you and I have talked about this for years. It's also overrated.
Yep.
Contracts are very valuable, reasonably reasonable. Look at what the good move, bad move, but look at what the Bucks were able to do because of Kyle Kuzma's contract, which actually goes down over the course of it. So like when that contract was signed, it was a well-constructed contract, both for, the Wizards in terms of, he got his money, but also makes him easier to move if they need to. It makes, other teams easier to acquire. So if you do smart things with contracts, you have the right numbers across your ledger, you can do a lot of good stuff. And so I'm not super worried about this. The Lakers used to be, I think, overly obsessed with the concept of the clean cap sheet. And I'm hopeful that they won't do that again. You want to be smart. You want to have appealing players under contract. But, like, for example, if were I the Lakers, and I don't think they have the means to get it done, but let's just say you could get, with that pick you've got left and whatever players it might, reasonably within reason, Nick Claxton between now and the end of the deadline. Well, I would trade for Nick Claxton this offseason too. He's a good defensive center, young player, fits the timeline, all that kind of stuff. And if you need to end up paying him, that's a pretty good investment, because a player like that, and I'm speaking about him literally and figuratively, a player like that is movable. If you need to make space for someone else.
Paid for a while anyway.
Right. But I mean, whether it's him,
I'm just saying, for an information's sake, he's under contract for another almost $70 million through 2028. So the reason I put is just sure. I'm just saying, what the cost is. That's my
right.
So people don't think that he's an impending free agent.
So if that's the case, that makes him even more appealing, because it's a pretty good investment in a young player who fits a good profile, good rebounder, nice, good interior defender, young player, which is why I think he's probably out of their price range. But I hope they do not get overly obsessed with preserving the clean cap sheet, because in the past, I feel like that has really limited them in what they do from, player acquisition standpoint, and also just being imaginative and creative in how you go about building a roster.
100% something you and I complained about covering this team for almost the majority of the time that we've actually covered this team. Coming up next, though, let's throw on some names. Would we make a move for them? Would we not? That's next. Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel, and Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds. Feel the thrill from the kickoff to the final whistle. This live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, icing on the cake. Download the app, head to FanDuel.com, get started with a bet of just $5, and if you win, you score $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com, bet with FanDuel, official sports partner of Super Bowl 59.
All right, so it's noon Pacific. We will obviously do our darndest to have some sort of update on the channel, and both audio and on YouTube. Whether the Lakers do something or not, we will certainly try to respond to that. Lakers obviously playing on Thursday night against the new look Golden State Warriors, who will not quite have their new look in place. I wouldn't think Jimmy Butler will be available for that game, but who knows? The man is vengeful and has been ready to leave Miami for a while, and got a $121 million extension. So he might be, if he can clear physicals and all that kind of stuff fast enough, maybe he will be there to play. But with the idea in mind of the Lakers trying to pick up some players and improve them, you have a list, Andy, of guys that might be out there for the Lakers to go get.
Well, we had talked about Miles Turner. Neither one of us think he would be gettable. If he was, I think I speak for you when I say I would do it, but I don't think he will be. Brought up Robert Williams III in Portland, especially with Gabe now being a very clean fit for him. JJ Redick, it's very clear, loves Gabe. And, on one hand, Time Lord is banged up all the time. On the other hand, Gabe gets hurt as well. Depending on what, if anything, the Lakers have to attach to make this work, like Portland, I believe, would actually save a little money depending on if whatever the Lakers had to send out, whoever the Lakers had to send out, I should say, got routed somewhere else, or if you broaden out the trade a little bit more, there is the potential for Portland to save a little money on this. But assuming the sweeteners aren't too sweet, I would roll the dice with Robert Williams, just because I think the upside is potentially there for him to make more of a difference in the playoffs than Gabe will, even though, again, Gabe has played very well over like the last month or so. I just feel like Robert Williams could potentially help them, even if it's risky, in ways that Gabe probably won't, even if he plays well, even if he's available.
I can live with that. Yeah, I mean, Time Lord is a good player. He's just never available. And so, I feel probably a little more, that Vincent's more reliable. But again, if you're trying to fill an obvious hole, and you have limited means to do it, then you do need to take a little bit of a risk. And, is he the kind of, I'll go back to my previous formula. Again, if the price can't be ridiculous, I'm certainly not overpaying for him.
No.
But, and you look at what the center market has, Valanciunas went for essentially seconds. Vucevic is on the market essentially for seconds. He's a name that I would not be. He doesn't solve problems.
No.
But Time Lord does. And again, you need a skill set. It is not a name you need. It is not, an all-star you need. You don't need a guy who can put up, huge numbers for you on any given night. Vucevic, other than rebounding, does not solve the problems that you have. In fact, he probably makes them worse. So Time Lord, okay, I can live with that. I think that's a pretty decent starting point.
There's Day'Ron Sharp, about $4 million expiring, has been linked to the Lakers for a while. Chris Boucher has come up, but really I think he's much closer to what they already have in undersized guys. I mean, he's a really skinny dude. Like, he's up for the challenge, but he's really not much bigger than any of the non-centers you'd be asking to do this. He's just one more guy you can theoretically throw at the problem. And then you start getting into some, non-center but bigger, unusual players like a Bruce Brown, for example. He's been attached to the Lakers for a while. That's likely going to cost Rui as the starting point for this. There are certain things Rui does better than Bruce Brown, namely scoring. Bruce Brown is a better playmaker, although the need for that is less now that you have Luka. The rebounding is better for Bruce Brown, but to some degree, like assuming Vando stays healthy, the need for some of that rebounding has lessened. And
Brown's played reasonly well once he's sort of rounded into a little bit of shape from his injury. He was injured for a while.
Yes, he was.
And so he's played reasonable well. He did not play in Toronto's. Oh, no, he did play in Toronto's game, I should say, against the Grizzlies on Wednesday, and didn't do a whole lot in that, but he's played reasonable well. I disagree with you a little bit about the relative value here, and I kind of like the idea of somebody who can be a bit more of a bridge. I'm not saying I'm itching to trade Rui for Bruce Brown, but just in terms of skill sets,
it'd be very difficult to do it if you didn't trade Rui.
Right, I'm saying, but Brown can guard up a little bit still, and so I think you gain a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah.
In terms of having him, if you trade Rui, you're putting a lot of eggs in the Jared Vanderbilt health basket. But Brown, I think, provides some flexibility, particularly if you end up, moving Gabe Vincent or something as well. I kind of like that as almost a very extremely poverty-stricken at this point in his career. Josh Hart, just a guy who can do a lot of little things for you, and probably in the context in which the Lakers would deploy him, I don't mind that at all.
It'd be interesting. I mean, you mentioned it, especially if you move Gabe. If you move Gabe and you're making this move to pick up Bruce Brown, like then all of a sudden you are starting to talk about implementing a lot of new parts, like to the point where you may be making this more
Maybe
complicated.
I'm more
than
thinking
it's
about the
actually
guy,
worth.
like the mechanics of how do you do it, like. Okay, but I think there could be some value just in terms of what Brown, who's probably as good of a rebounder as Rui is.
Well, I'd say he's pound for pound better.
Pound for pound, yeah. But I mean, in total, and you do get a little bit of that defensive versatility where he can kind of guard across a few different positions in ways that could be useful. Sure. I wouldn't hate that. I'll be honest with you.
The other thing that is really interesting for the Lakers is the idea of flipping Maxi Kleber for somebody, because then you're not actually taking anything out of your rotation. You're actually just adding to it. The problem is with the new CBA rules, Maxi Kleber can only be traded by himself. Like you could bring back a couple players for Maxi, but he can only be traded by himself. You can't add like a veteran's minimum or something like that with Kleber. So he makes $11 million. You can only trade him for someone or someone's making 11 mil or less, because of the Lakers being a first apron team. And, that creates the complications for both for what you can take in and how you can trade Kleber. Like, for example, Maxi Kleber is like $1 million short of it being perfect for Robert Williams, like a perfect match, in which case I'd say done. Like I would roll that dice in a second. And look, I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think if you turned it into a third team where the Lakers can send out a little more salary to take the extra mil for Time Lord, you can make it work, but it just becomes that much more complicated. Like, Kleber's slightly underpaid to be like perfect for these purposes.
Yeah. And again, what I think is fun about this is that when your core is LeBron and Luka, I mean, there are certain skill sets. Obviously, we're talking a lot about defense here, but there's certain skill sets, like you want guys who can space the floor, catch and shoot guys are great, cutters are great. You don't necessarily need a lot of players with great one-on-one offensive talent. The short answer of, I've heard people talk about this with LeBron, like who can play with LeBron? The answer is anybody can play with LeBron. As long as you don't care about being super ball dominant, you can play with LeBron James. And the same answer applies to Luka. Like, you can play with Luka Doncic. And the flexibility that affords the Lakers to try to fill out a supporting cast is really valuable. It is different than this conversation that we were having about AD, because it's a different type of player. Like, if you want to add a center, it's going to be a certain kind of center. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And you're going to end up paying starters prices for a guy you essentially have to use for backup minutes. I don't think that applies to a Luka LeBron core in the same way. And that's a nice thing.
Yeah. Knowing we talked about this before, and then we can wrap, but getting Luka provided so much clarity for the organization moving forward. With that clarity also comes optionality, because you just have more definitive ways that you can plan. And when you know that your new cornerstone is going to turn 26 in a month, like, there is an urgency to, move things along just because of the LeBron piece of it. And you should never take for granted that you've got like 10 years to make something happen, because you don't.
Right. And an opportunity, if you have a 15% chance, 20% chance of doing something good this year, Shea, and I'm not rooting for this, I don't root for injuries, but Shea turns an ankle, twists a knee, whatever it is at the wrong time, the West is wide open.
The point is just, though, the Lakers don't have to be desperate. And there was, I think there was a perception among some people that the LeBron AD setup before created a desperation to either push all the chips in, or, as they kind of did pivot. But before, if say the Luka thing wasn't on the table for the Lakers, they might have felt either an external pressure to do something a little more wild, or kind of face the fact that you're just spinning your wheels and doing nothing. Now they don't have to worry about that.
Yep. Locked on Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 30,000 subscribers. We, of course, will be back following the game on Thursday. But again, try to update everybody after the deadline as well, whether the Lakers make a move or not. So we'll see what happens, and we will see everyone after. Thanks for tuning in.